Okay, we're recording. Great. Well, welcome everybody to the March 17th Salsa Society seminar. Luckily, our UVM branded PowerPoint presentation template is aligned with St. Patrick's Day, so that makes things easier for today's session. Our theme today is new crops and new markets, and I'm super excited to have Jane Kolodinsky join us to talk about hemp, and Margaret Skinner to join us to talk about saffron. Just a little bit of background on Salsa Society for those who haven't joined us before or want a reminder. This really is sort of a grassroots effort to just try to promote some sharing and cross-pollination across the College of Ag and Life Sciences. And it's currently organized by Hans Estrin, Andrew May, and I. We do welcome additional members of that organizing team. We would love to have it stretch further across the college and to represent more people, more of our colleagues. Connect with any one of us if you'd like to learn more about that. It's a pretty low burden thing, and we're actually really rolling along now, thanks in large part to Andrew and Hans's efforts to get this thing organized. If you have new ideas for Salsa Society themes or topics, you can always go to go.uvm.edu/cells2 society ideas and fill out a simple form there to submit your thoughts, or email us or call us. So the Salsa Society seminars are a monthly seminar that are held in alternation with a brainstorming session around new projects and just collaborative discussion for what we ought to do next, where Salsa Society is what's been done or what's happening now. Again, we welcome ideas on themes for discussion in that brainstorming session as well. Same link. This is super exciting to me. We actually have almost a full calendar year actually planned out for Salsa Society seminars, and this is new. It's largely been a month-to-month type thing and just done just in time. But again, thanks to Hans and Andrew for getting this populated with ideas going forward. So you can see that the next time we spend together will be April 14th. That's one of the out-of-the-box brainstorming sessions, and Hans will be leading that. And we already have some topics, I think, roughly confirmed, but we'll be announcing those shortly. After that, in May and June, we're going to be focusing on water as a theme for a Salsa Society seminar in May, and human behavior as a theme in June. And you can see the other themes that are emerging there for future sessions as well. You can always catch the recordings of these on the Salsa Society website within CALS, and also we do have a YouTube channel that that provides the recordings as well. Okay, with that, I again want to welcome Jane Kolodinsky and Margaret Skinner, and we're going to start with Jane's presentation. Each presenter is going to speak for about 20 minutes, and we'll be doing Q&A at the end. Again, we've allocated about another 15 to 20 minutes for that. So Jane, with that, I'm going to stop sharing and ask you to take over.
Thank you. So hopefully you can see my screen, and I will start my slideshow. Thank you for inviting me to present at the Salsa Society seminar series. It just so happens that 2 days ago, a colleague of mine, Tyler Mark, who's a co-PI along with Heather Darby, but she was leading the session, she wasn't doing the presentation. We were the keynote at Heather's National Hemp Conference. So that was kind of exciting for us. So we had a presentation all ready to go. I pulled Tyler's slides out of this because our presentation went an hour. So you told me I have 20 minutes, so let's go. I'm also very thrilled to be here with Margaret, whom I have been collaborating with on saffron as well. So these are novel value-added crops that have a lot of potential and are both, I'm going to say, quote unquote, new. Hemp new because it was illegal since 1934 to grow hemp in the U.S. And it's after 50 years, it's basically new. And of course, with saffron, it has been not produced in the U.S., but we'll let Margaret talk about that. So I'm going to give you an update on industrial hemp all the way from policy to consumer demand with a little bit of production in between. And most of this has been funded by USDA, a NIFA foundational grant, Economic Impacts of Hemp-Based Industries on Rural Communities, which is a collaboration between Colorado State, University of Kentucky, and the University of Vermont. And as I said, I'm the PD. Tyler, Mark, and Heather are co-PIs on this project. So there we go. So I'll cover a variety of areas based on research: hemp policy, hemp production, hemp consumption, which includes both a national survey of hemp consumers that is hot off the presses. We just got over 2,000 results back, and a national supermarket scanner data project, which was funded by a Gun Catalyst grant, which was looking at both stated preferences in terms of behavioral experiments, which I'm not going to present on, and supermarket scanner data, which of course is revealed preferences and how consumers spend their money on hemp foods. And then we'll talk a little bit about where the market is going. So hemp policy, I think it's important to look at the policy landscape. It wasn't until 2014 that the Agricultural Act of 2014 established hemp pilot projects. Vermont was early and has been in this game since 2014. And then in 2018, the Farm Bill legalized hemp production across the United States. There have been a variety of rules developed. In fact, almost 167 plans, and I think there are 90 different plans now that have been developed by states, territories, and tribal nations. That interim final rule was published in 2019. There was an original sunset for hemp pilot programs in 2020, which didn't happen. The final rule on hemp, which meant everybody had to have an approved plan, was March 2021. The sunset date for that now was September 2021. And of course, the sunset date for hemp pilot programs and approved plans was just passed in 2022. So let's talk a little bit about the status of state and tribal government plans. Our analysis was through July 14th, 2021, and we had a team of graduate students who were part of that economic impact project team look at every single plan and do a content analysis. And so there were 67 plans. 6 were operating under a producer license. 20 were operating under the continuing resolutions. 2 were drafting a plan for USDA. 2 had plans under review, and 1 was pending legislation. So that gives you the landscape. Right now, as of February 25th, 96 independent plans were approved by USDA. About 9 plus or minus are operating under the USDA producer license, and 1 take or leave is under review. So with these hemp plans, and what are these hemp plans? They are plans that each state or tribal nation or territory has developed to look at hemp production. And we were really surprised. I was surprised anyway. The plans seemed to focus on regulation and a clear delineation between marijuana and industrial hemp, and appeared more punitive than they appeared to be helping the states to develop a hemp industry. So it was really, don't grow drugs. That's the takeaway. And why do we want to look at hemp plans? It's because once we start to get interstate commerce and finance across the states for developing the hemp industry, you have to have common language. And indeed, there wasn't a lot of common language in these plans. In fact, you can see that 51 of the 67 plans mentioned hemp when this was all about hemp. And then you can see different plans: negligence, license, conviction, corrective action plans, and so on. Down the line of how many times these were mentioned in 67 plans. And these are the most common terms. And I got to tell you that there is no consistency across the plans across states. So if we really are going to move this industry ahead and look at interstate commerce, when we're looking at growth in one area, processing in another area, manufacturing in another area, and then national sales across state lines, we really do have to get on the same page. I also think that these plans need to look beyond. We need to get over hemp as drugs and move towards the positive characteristics of hemp. So moving into cultivation, and I think this is really important. So when you look at expansion and contraction in hemp cultivation, you can see that boom really happened after the 2018 Farm Bill said that we could, produce hemp nationally. And then we see a big drop off. Now, unfortunately, and I'll talk about this a little later, unfortunately, the media has done the hemp industry no help whatsoever, because in the media we hear, oh, the hemp is done, nobody's growing hemp anymore, it was a boom and bust industry. Indeed, that's not true. What happened was we had a lot of speculation in 2019. We had people come into the growing market and the processing market that really had no idea what they were doing, no idea how to grow a business, no idea how to be entrepreneurial. And the contracts that were supplied in some cases were pretty shady deals. So just like any industry, there's a huge entrance into an industry, and then it sugars off to find its sweet spot for the people who really know what they're doing or gain the expertise through extension programming, for example, and business planning to be able to understand what consumers want, how to produce hemp, how to process hemp. And of course, we know that a lot of the hemp lay fallow because there wasn't enough processing and drying. And a lot of that hemp went moldy. And of course, most of it was grown for that holy grail of CBD. Well, I'd like to say that our USDA project, which was funded in 2019, was based on what happens when the CBD bubble bursts. And indeed, we have seen a CBD bubble burst already, and we have enough CBD piled away in warehouses probably to last us for the next 60 years. So the future of hemp is not floral material and CBD. The future of hemp has got to be grain and fiber with some floral material. That's the world according to Jay. So here we can look at Fast Markets data and USDA data to see that the total farm gate value in 2021 was $800 million. The floral market value was most of that. The Oregon hemp market had most of that, and the Colorado hemp market was below that. So Vermont, we're a very small player, but I think a very important player as we move on and we look at that national consumer survey and find out what characteristics of hemp are important to consumers. So Vermont, once again, can find its niche. So again, we can look at the floral hemp markets where Oregon is the big player, California, Michigan, Massachusetts, and believe it or not, Utah, which was a surprise to me. When we look at the total grain volume, so hemp can floral material, grain, which is seeds, but we like to call it grain, and fiber. So of the grain market, about a third is for seed, whereas the rest is to be put into hemp oil, beauty products, foods, and so on. And Tyler and I really believe that the grain market has a large potential, but we need to mention that Canada is the largest seed producing nation for hemp. So we either have to collaborate, figure out what they're doing, or find more space in the marketplace for grain. The leader fiber producing states: North Carolina, Montana, Missouri, and Kentucky. So moving from production, I'm not a production economist. My real forte is looking at the demand side of the marketplace. I'll turn to the National Consumer Study. And this is fascinating. So this is based on a Vermont study. Hannah Lacasse did her master's thesis based on Vermonter poll data, which was a representative sample of Vermonters. We then moved it to a national sample of more than 2,000 respondents. Of course, we used Qualtrics, and this is part of that USDA Economic Impacts Grant. And some of the material from Vermont has already been published, and so you'll be able to look this up if you're interested. So very interesting. Most people are familiar with hemp products, at least one. and it goes up to 9. And, you know, I'm sure you've heard anecdotally, there are 50,000 different products hemp can be used for in this world. Some people say that's an exaggeration, but that's the word on the street. But you can see that hemp familiarity it's out there. People have heard of hemp products. What are those products? Of course, the number one is CBD, but don't exclude clothing and textiles, personal care items, rope, food products, pet products, which is an interesting thing because it's actually illegal to put hemp in pet products, but we'll get to that later. A little bit less of construction materials, plastic, rope, of course, quintessential use of hemp. But I believe that if you look at national statistics of where the growth market is, it is in industrials, construction materials, and plastics. Consumers, how do they feel about the variety of different products? You can see that they are highly positive or positive about a lot of these products. Now, we didn't ask them to rank, we asked them to rate. So that means that when you ask somebody to rate a variety of things, they tend to say they like it all, right? Instead of ranking these in terms of what do you like best versus worst. But we did use a rating, and we can see that when you look at those green bars, the dark green bar and the light green bar, there is a large, highly positive population out there with regard to hemp-based products. We can also look at importance of different characteristics of hemp. And again, the green, the dark green and the light green mean it's highly important or important. So we're looking at things that are quintessential Vermont, environmentally friendly, organic, natural, free of heavy metals, locally cultivated, locally processed, locally sold. And then we can get into this quagmire of, is it drugs or is it not drugs? Many consumers are more positive on THC free or 1% THC level. Right now, the legal acceptable level is 0.3 of 1%. And then we can look at approvals such as FDA, this product has been FDA approved or it carries an FDA approved label. So these are some of the characteristics that consumers believe are important. Let's go back up because I'm gonna go out and then I'm gonna narrow down to our supermarket scanner data survey. When we look at the global industrial hemp market, and before, notice I said construction materials, but we're looking at personal care and food and beverages. That is that would give you about 1/3 of the market. Textiles, we're a little bit at over half the market, and so on down the line. So the global industrial hemp market right now, 2021, is a $4.1 billion market. So we can look at where's food in there, and we can see it's somewhere in the middle. But that industrial applications is a huge category. And of course, CBD remains the top. And then there's the potential growth in the food market, and it is being New Frontier data, which is where we get most of our national higher level data on hemp, says that there's a huge opportunity and growth in that hemp foods segment. So now we'll turn to our IRI data. These are data that cost about $60,000 a year to obtain, but through a cooperative agreement with the Economic Research Service of USDA, we are able to get a hold of these data at much less, although the firewalls are almost impossible, and you have to get every single thing approved by ERS or NORC, it's out of the University of Chicago, in order even to show it. So I'm telling you, everything that I'm showing has been pre-approved by the Economic Research Service. So here's a trend in hemp-based food sales where, again, we saw that huge spike and it's now been decreasing. There's an explanation for that, but we do see overall a growth in hemp-based foods. And this is supermarkets, so supermarket scanner data, so we're a little bit lower. Where are total sales of food with hemp ingredients happening? And when you look at this, you can say, oh, duh, no brainer. It's happening in population centers. So here where you see Middle Atlantic, of course, that contains New York City. You've got Atlanta, you've got Chicago. Less in the Pacific which I thought would be more, but of course then we've got Chicago in the West North. But you can see where if you were a hemp retailer, where would you try to enter the market? So this gives you just a picture of the U.S. And then total sales over time of foods with hemp ingredients. And we can see that general food has increased and then decreased. And we see growth in both hemp alcoholic products and hemp beverages. And then note 2013 the health. I will tell you that hemp-based products cannot make health claims, or else it needs FDA approval, which the FDA has been coming down pretty strong on hemp products that make health claims that are unsubstantiated. So what about hemp economic impact? How am I doing on time, Chris? Am I okay? Or am I done?
About 2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes. Okay. So well, economic impact. That's what our study is all about. The hemp industry has set the multiplier at 1.9, which says you put in $1 into the hemp industry and out comes an additional 90 cents. It's like a sausage making machine. In goes so much and out comes the other. But we asked, where did that number come from? You know, what does that mean? Because you can see that overall and on average, it might be 1.9, but when you look at individual sectors of the industry, it goes from 4.54 all the way down to 1, which means no multiplier. And so we're looking at 3 sectors: the floral sector and how it moves through, the fiber sector, the grain sector, and then how they all move together. Why is this important? It's important because there are no social accounting matrices for hemp. Nobody has done this before. Nobody has the numbers. We are building these social accounting matrices. What's the future? As I opened with, I think the media is not doing us any favors. People are searching less for the word hemp and CBD. The number of news stories has declined since 2019. Doesn't mean hemp isn't important. What is the impact on the industry? It says don't rely on mass media to get your message across if you are a hemp seller. You've got to have a marketing budget. People have seen or heard information. They actually look for information, but it's not going to happen through the mass media. So again, these were the attitudes towards products. Pretty good for different types of products. And this is really important. Is CBD grass generally regarded as safe? And you do not put health claims on CBD products. The USDA is getting ahead of the curve here, sending out warning letters, and they are on a fast track to see whether they will approve or not for CBD in the FDA. So what about retail outlets? This goes back to our policy in terms of if you're going to have interstate commerce, your plans across states better be better jive with one another, because as soon as you cross state lines, you have to follow the guidelines of the state that you're selling in. So almost half has been sold of, these are CBD, but let's make the analogy to different hemp-based products, have been sold online. So what's the bottom line? There are opportunities beyond CBD. Watch your claims. Don't rely on free publicity. Consumers are paying attention, but you've got to get their attention. There are positive attitudes across products, and there are opportunities across market channels. And this is our team. It's a big team. Tyler, that's Tyler up there in the upper left, and I will be at NOCO next week, probably giving the same presentation to a big consortium in Colorado. I'm very excited about that. But look, Vermont looks so much more relaxed than Kentucky. Okay, with that, I'll close.
Thanks so much,
for the opportunity.
Jane. Thank you very much, Jane. Appreciate it. And especially appreciate you boiling down a 1-hour keynote to 20 minutes. Thanks.
I took all the production stuff out.
And we'll move right into Margaret's presentation on Saffron. And Margaret, you should be able to share again.
Okay. Here we go. I wish I could see the people. I don't quite know. Oh, I don't know quite how to. Anyway, I can't see you guys, so I can't see how you're reacting.
We're not seeing your screen yet either.
Oh, you aren't. That's why.
At least I'm not.
Well, so okay, I'm gonna try and do it another way, I guess. There. Okay. I know how. That way. Oh, Kathy.
Getting there. You're getting there.
Can you see it now?
Yep. And then do slideshow.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
let's
Yep.
see.
From the beginning. Start from the beginning. Can you see it now?
I still see your slides, your actual.
Yeah. I don't know why. Oh, there. Okay.
There you
Now
go.
you can. Okay. All right. Good. So in the interest, or based on the expectations or the description of what the cells to society are, this presentation is not going to tell you how to grow saffron. It's going to talk about how our program developed and why it developed that way. Okay, but whenever we give presentations, I usually always ask, who's heard of saffron? These days, it's more likely who hasn't heard of saffron. And I can't see a raising of hands, but there's been quite a bit of publicity about saffron in the last couple of years. So I'm going to blindly assume that all of you that are on this event have heard of saffron. I'd love to know if any of you are actually growing it, but again, I can't. Maybe you could put it in the chat box or something like that. Anyway, so one of the big questions that people always ask us is, why grow saffron in Vermont? We've sort of gotten over the question of, oh, saffron won't survive in Vermont. We know now that it really actually will survive. And this is why. Given that over 90% of the farms in Vermont and actually throughout the US are small, grossing revenues of less than $350,000, diversification is key if we want these small family farms to survive. So the US saffron market in 2020 was estimated at over $14 million. Holy smokes, that's a lot of saffron. So we know that saffron will survive in Vermont and actually throughout quite a bit of the United States. And one of the other things that people, the naysayers, used to say, probably still do, it's so labor intensive, no farmer is ever going to grow it. And it's kind of like maple syrup. If you had to grow maple syrup in June or July or August, you wouldn't get sugar makers growing it. But it's the heavy labor time for maple syrup is at a time when farmers can't get on the field. For saffron, it's October and November where most of the field work is already done. Okay. So the big question is, why are entomologists? I am an entomologist by training and by learning. And why are we at the Entomology Research Lab studying saffron? And it's very simple, really. Our mission here at the Entomology Lab is to address agriculture with an interdisciplinary approach to solve real-world issues faced by farmers. And that can be quite diverse. We have worked a lot with farmers that you grow high vegetables in high tunnels, and we saw them growing greens in the middle of winter and making no money at all. And so in 2015, Arash Galagola Behbahani, he was visiting his wife, who was a graduate student here at our lab, and he said to me, "Why don't you grow saffron in Vermont?" And I'm embarrassed to say, my response was, "That's a stupid idea." And that was because I had tried to grow saffron many years ago, not having any idea what the life cycle of that plant was. I planted the corms, nothing came up. Of course, I was expecting it to come up in the springtime. Anyway, I went back into my office. I thought about it some more. I thought about high tunnel production as an option, and that sort of was the beginning of this whole initiative. Interestingly enough, we started getting lots of national and international publicity. Just to give you an idea, you know, Boston Globe, BBC, etc. I was flying on a British Air flight, and all of us, you know, they have these little shorts of interesting stories. Holy smokes, they did a thing on Vermont saffron. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, we made it to the British Air. Anyway, what became a greater challenge was, could it be grown in the field? Because high tunnel production is still a little complicated. Anyway, the general response by a lot of growers and other people is, what a cool idea. And that's really where it's gone from there. Okay, so though probably a lot of you know this, I'm just going to go through what saffron is. It's the stigmas, and most flowers have 3 in this particular case. It's the dried stigmas of a fall blooming crocus, Crocus sativus. So it's been in cultivation for over 3,500 years. The U.S. imported over 85 tons in 2020. And for those of you who know what saffron looks like, that is a lot of saffron. Anyway, the U.S. market is valued at 14.8 million. And according to some of the websites, it's predicted to triple in 2025. Originated in Greece or Crete, though Iranians love to say it came from Iran, but it probably didn't. However, Iran is the really #1 producer of saffron, along with a bunch of these other places. Okay, so what's saffron good for? Holy smokes, it cures everything. Everybody knows, yeah, you can use it in all sorts of different foods. It is a nutraceutical or medicinal extract, and what Jane said, you can't say that it's going to cure cancer or migraine headaches or depression or anxiety, but you can look online and you will see hundreds of articles that indicate that it has lots of benefits. Cancer, high blood pressure, it goes on and on. Just as an aside, that's probably the future of U.S. saffron in terms of generating revenue. But we're not there yet. Anyway, it's used in cosmetics and perfume. It's an ornamental plant. Growers can sell corms, which go from $25, cents a piece to $1 a piece, depending on what the seller is into. And the other big potential is value-added products, and that's where growers in the U.S. are really sort of starting to cash in. And you can see a whole list of all the different things that it can be used for, and that's just barely scratching the surface. Okay, so why is saffron so expensive? Globally, most processing is done by hand. It takes a minute to pick 10 flowers, takes 2 minutes to separate them, and it takes 142 flowers to produce 1 gram of saffron. Okay, so that gives you an idea. And these pictures down below show on the far right, that's what saffron fields look like in Iran. On the left-hand side, that's a group of little old ladies in Italy. And what they tend to do is when it's saffron season, they ring a bell and all the women come running to help process the saffron. Okay, so that gives you an idea. I don't want to go through the whole life cycle because that's not what this is about, but there's one or two important things. So you start down at the bottom. I don't know if you can see this. You plant the corms in August or September, okay? You buy them. Most of them these days are produced in the Netherlands. So within a couple of weeks, they begin to sprout, and by October, they are actually blooming. So you plant them in August or September, and by October, you're actually producing a product. Usually the first year, they don't produce a lot of flowers. It sort of depends on the size of the corm and the weather, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the thing that nobody gets. They remain green from, so the leaves, you start seeing them in September, October, they will stay green. And you can see this is what the fields look like in Holland and why they produce so many corms. But those corms remain viable. The leaves continue to photosynthesize, and this is a really important time because that's when they're producing the new corms. Then the corms develop, and then by July, June or July, the corms go dormant, and they don't come back to life until next August or September. Okay. So our saffron program, by necessity, had to be broad-based and multidisciplinary. And I just want to explain sort of what that means to us. Some of that's because we're entomologists, but even though I'm an entomologist, I do know how to grow things. And I've been growing things in Vermont since 1955. So I do have some sense of what it takes to grow a plant here. So anyway, because of the interest that developed for saffron, both locally and nationally and internationally, we have had to develop a program to meet the needs on all of these different spheres, which makes a stronger program, better for everybody all around. It includes both research and extensive outreach, because this is a new crop for most people. Even though it's been grown in Pennsylvania for 300 years by the Pennsylvania Dutch, it really wasn't seen as a crop that anybody thought about. So like I said, it relies on multidisciplinary collaboration because there are all these different things that we need to address. So it really follows the path of grower needs. And so as our research and outreach has developed, we have had to redesign it to meet those grower needs. It totally depends on external funding support, which is not easy. You know, USDA, they have their pet crops, and saffron isn't one of them yet. Okay, so our research focus, initially it focused on saffron cultivation. How do you grow it? We didn't really know that when we started back in 2015. We have a much better idea. We started out growing it in high tunnels and then moved towards field production. We also have some work looking at growing saffron in solar arrays. So one of the other complications is, okay, we're sitting up here in Vermont, but there are growers all over the country who have contacted us saying they want to know how to grow saffron. And it's a little challenging to be able to say to someone from California who's in the height of a drought, well, geez, should you irrigate or not irrigate? And that's where drawing in international people from Iran that deal with similar conditions is really important. So then there's been saffron pest management, which involves various arthropods and small mammals and deer. But then it became a question of, oh, geez, we need to know what the quality of the stuff is. And so what's the best way to dry it? And so we started working with the chemistry department on that, and got a little bit of funding from the USDA to really develop data-based recommendations for how to handle, how to dry saffron to increase quality. And then, of course, market development. And that's where Jane has been really important. And I just want to shout out to Kathy Yandow and her group. We couldn't do what we have done without her help and the help of other people in her group, because it's wonderful to say, oh yeah, let's do research and let's go to research conferences to talk about all this, but really it's growers that we need to reach. Okay, so outreach. So we established what we call the North American Center for Saffron Research and Development back in 2017 maybe, and that was partly because we would say, well, I'm from the Entomology Research Lab. And they would say, oh, we don't want to know about entomology. We want to know about saffron. So it was essential that we established this center. And actually, people from all over the country and actually now all over the world come to us to get input and to provide outreach and interconnecting. So for the last 6 years, we have held these international workshops. Used to be in Vermont. The last couple of years, it's been online. We get between 100 or more people coming to these events. Again, from the one that we're getting ready to do in March has about 25 people from 25 different states and 7 different countries. Way back in the beginning, we started an email listserv, and that has over 800 subscribers, again, from all over the world, where growers can share their ideas or their concerns or questions, etc. We developed a whole bunch of fact sheets because all these people they would call us up, they would want to spend hours on the phone. We don't have time to do that. And so we came up with fact sheets, even though we didn't know everything. And we have revised those fact sheets regularly throughout the time. We've got several videos. We've done farm tours, media interviews, hundreds of them. We developed an enterprise budget, and we have talked with thousands of growers. Okay. Our target audience, you can see it there. Really, anybody who's interested in saffron. Okay, the future looks bright-ish. We hear from new potential growers every darn week, and they want to try it. The market for U.S. grown saffron is expanding, and I don't know if I have this later on, but growers in the U.S. are selling their saffron for between $25 and $75 a gram. A gram! I can't tell you right now how much that is in pounds, but it's a lot. It's a lot more than it's more than gold. Well, maybe not now based on what's happening with our economy, but anyway, new value-added saffron-based products are being developed. Growers are realizing that marketing is key, and some are doing that well and some aren't. We still have support for research, but it's on somewhat of a low level. So what we said from the very beginning, saffron isn't the goose that laid the golden egg. We wanted to make sure when we started this that some growers said, oh, I want to start growing an acre of saffron. Oh, boy. We said, no, you need to start small, because quite honestly, we didn't want to have the same thing that happened with hemp to happen to the growers that we interacted with. Okay, so again, our 6th annual saffron workshop is online, and it's on March 23 and 30. And that is it. Did I do it in 20 minutes?
You sure did.
All right.
Yeah. Right. I think right exactly 20 minutes. So.
All right.
Yeah. Margaret, thanks so much. That was great.
And if anybody wants to know about how to really grow it, they need to contact me.
Okay. So do we have questions for Jane or Margaret or both? Anybody? We can use the chat box. We also are a small enough group where I would dare say we could unmute and ask our questions live. Cheryl, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you. Those are both such terrific, informative, interesting presentations. Like, you know, I've been so interested following both of these projects. I wonder it's a big question, but your soundbite-ish answer. I have some concern when people are not growing food, whether it's for food to raise other food or food to feed humans. And I just wonder, like, how, when you think about food systems in Vermont, growers in Vermont, how do you see these truly specialty crops, unlike lettuce, or other things, which of course are not really specialty at all. But how do you see these fitting in, and what are your wishes for these as enterprises for Vermont growers?
I can answer that initially if you want. Anyway, I hear what you're saying, but growing spinach is not going to sustain growers. And so I'm going to give you one example. There's a grower down in Pennsylvania, and because people are saying the same thing that you're saying. They say, oh God, saffron, it's just for rich people. And so, and it costs so much to produce it, et cetera, et cetera. So here's what he says. He said, Margaret, I can grow a bunch of spinach and I cut it and I wash it and I take it to the farmer's market. Maybe it'll sell and maybe it won't. And if it doesn't sell, I've spent all that time. I have to bring it back and I put it on the compost heap. And that's it. My saffron, I spent a whole bunch of time at a time when I didn't have a lot of other things I had to do. And it provided a longer period of time for seasonal workers. And so I take that little envelope of saffron, maybe I sell it, maybe I don't. I bring it back, I put it back in the drawer, and I take it out next week. And so to me, I think these farmers have got to be creative. They've got to look beyond just growing the staples. That's not going to sustain them economically. Anyway, that's my take on it.
I have an answer too. And that's it's a multifaceted answer, and it builds on Margaret's. First of all, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, and commodity agriculture makes nobody money. And if the farmers can't stay in business, then we're not going to have any food anyway. So hemp has been helping dairy farmers diversify. Dairy farmers could diversify into saffron. Only we've talked. I think we had this conversation, Margaret, where dairy is like big, you're working with big animals, and saffron is very meticulous. So maybe they don't go together. But hemp and dairy go together. In fact, in Morrisville, there's a dairy farmer who's actually into hemp. You look at hemp is food. When you look at alternative proteins and so on, the grain market is food. We're looking at all of these meat alternatives in terms of protein, bio-based proteins, and hemp is right there. So hemp is food. Hemp can also, if you look beyond just growing it for flowers, there is dual crop hemp. So dual crop hemp would be fiber and grain. And if you have cattle, that the fiber can be a waste product. You decorticate that, you've got your animal bedding. The spent seed cakes from pressing hemp and using the oil for, let's say, a health and a beauty product, which you don't eat, but indeed that spent cake has a lot of nutritional profile that is great for the equine and dairy industry. So, we have to be creative and think of food as more than just commodity-based food. I'm going to grow wheat and I'll sell it for whatever the market will get me. Maybe there's a way to help farmers survive and make a living wage if they diversify with and growing a high-value product might actually help them to grow the product that they don't get a whole lot from.
Thank you both. Other questions? Let's see, chat.
I have a quick question. I'm just curious, Andrew May here, by the way. I'm just curious if there are any innovations in the mechanized production of saffron, or is there anything on the horizon that would make it a little less labor intensive?
I know it has grown, that there are mechanical methods or mechanical tools used in Iran for both, I think, somewhat for the harvesting, but more for the processing of it. When you look at those fields, we don't have growers that have that level of commitment in saffron for obvious reasons. And right now, saffron growers in general are able, if they're pretty industrious, they're able to sell as much product as they can produce. I wouldn't necessarily want growers to move to a 2 or 3 acre production system right now until we know a little bit more about how best to grow it. And so I don't think the industry is at that level yet. However, there are some people that are really interested in growing it vertically, either in greenhouses, under lights, et cetera, et cetera. I don't tend to think that's a great idea because there's so much infrastructure and added expense to growing things vertically. But I know there are people that want to do it, and that will be where the whole medicinal aspect comes in. That if you can grow a hygienically clean product undercover, that maybe that has a added value. My feeling, I guess, when we started working with Saffron, growers said, well, how do I sell it? How do I sell it? And I said, well, first let's figure out how to grow it. And then when you have enough stuff, then you develop a market. Well, some of them listened to me and some of them didn't. And they have never stopped talking about wanting to develop markets. And we're probably at a point in this little industry where marketing, its time has come. And it's tricky getting funding to be able to actually do that. And so far, except for the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, we have not gotten a whole lot of traction nationally. But that's what it takes, because anyway, it's a bigger market for all of us. I'll just say one other thing about it. Again, when we first started, some growers said, oh, Margaret, don't tell other people. This needs to be Vermont's little thing. And I said, no, the bigger the market, the bigger the industry, the more people that are growing it, the more people will know about it, and the bigger the market will be for them, for everybody. And I think people have adopted that. And it's the growers that are working on saffron, they're very collegial in general. They're willing to share information.
I have a kind of a follow-up to that for both of you. One of the themes that I heard in both talks was this idea of new crops, new markets, potential speculation, potential saturation or beyond. So what's our role as a university, as the academy, and an extension? What's our role in that in real time as the markets are developing? And do we have a role to help avoid speculation?
That's a really good question, Chris. And, there's a couple of answers to that. From the business side of things and the entrepreneurial side, the early bird catches the worm. They're going to catch the most value, right? Now, others can come in and either ride the wave if they're not the early birds. And then the goal there is you have to stay ahead of the curve. So with hemp, I learned how to grow hemp. I'm now going into dual crop hemp instead of single crop hemp. I am using waste to value, turning the waste into either fertilizer. I know Deb Nair has a project with an SBIR. I start looking at the ecosystem services. I start looking at my niches and what is going to sell. How am I going to brand my hemp? And so that you stay ahead of the curve as it becomes a commodity. And this is probably heresy, but commodification of anything is the bane of a farmer's existence. And that means you got to get big and get out. You got to be efficient at all costs. And for me, it's kind of a race to the bottom. So with hemp in particular, and probably with saffron too, as the market continues to grow, it's how can I stay ahead of the curve and keep my brand. And Vermont's got a huge, ahead. We are head and above and shoulders above. What is the next thing coming down the pike? How can I reap in the beginning rewards for myself? It's complicated, and I think as markets evolve, that growers, manufacturers, and sellers have to evolve anyway. I mean, I'll just give a little anecdote here. When we were looking at sugar sweetened beverage taxes in Vermont, it was a penny an ounce was proposed, And we heard the convenience store seller saying, "Oh, I'm going to lose all my money." And I said, "Well, you're not selling pet rocks anymore. You guys are smart. It's like when something comes in, if people don't want to pay for sugar sweetened beverages, you will put the flavored waters on the shelves. I mean, you're smart. You'll learn." So I think that's where extension comes in, to provide the audience with those skills, not only to be the best grower, but to understand the market more broadly and how to be nimble when you need to pivot.
And I think one thing I heard, thank you, Jane. I think one thing I heard from Margaret as well was sort of this power of early imperfect information or early incomplete information. And I know I personally sometimes feel like I avoid putting some things out because I think it needs to be better. And oftentimes the feedback we get, I think, as a group is anything is better than nothing. And so I want, especially in these emerging markets, is there more to that?
I think some information is better than no. You can't go in a vacuum, right? But the idea is you don't step in with a $7 billion investment because I'm operating on imperfect information. I mean, Margaret said it. You start small, you test the water, you gain your expertise, and that's what didn't happen with the speculators. They came in, "Oh, I'm going to make $1 million with hemp. I'm going to plant all these fields, and I have no idea how to grow it. I have no idea how to harvest it. I have no idea where to sell it. My contract that I signed went out of business. They were a big scammer." You have to know before you, oh, there you go. You have to know before you grow. How about that?
Margaret, more to add to that?
Well, I think each situation or crop is a little different. And so where hemp is and the people that are growing hemp is very different from the people that are growing saffron. And so it seems to me like a lot of the growers that we have for saffron, they're people that maybe are retirees and they want to make a little bit of money, or they want to move back to Vermont and they want to reinvigorate their farm, and they don't have, some of them anyway, they don't know how to make a website. That really, it's pretty clear that if you want to sell saffron, you got to have a website, especially if you're not going to farmers markets. Even if you're going to farmers market, you better have a website. And a lot of these people don't have that expertise. And so I do believe that it is the role potentially of the University of Vermont to provide that backstopping, to sort of teach them how to do some of that. However, at the same time, one of the things that's happening is we have these workshops and there are people, growers that present. There's one in particular down in Texas, and he talked about his marketing, and he said, you got to get a website and you got to have a story. And he is 100% correct. So he's got all his kids out there working on it, and Future Farmers of America. He's got people paying extra for his product because they want to support what he's doing. And that's really what you got to do. And to a certain extent, we can help sort of facilitate that or encourage that. And one of the ways we're doing that is getting growers talking to each other about it.
And Margaret, what you just said, that is the opposite of commodification, because when you commodify something, you have lost all of that story. It's just, sorry, folks, it's just milk. I'm sending 100 pounds of milk or 1,000 pounds of milk, and it's anonymous.
Well, and we have interacted with some people, local Vermont people that are oh, they're so cool. Oh, we really care about Vermont and the Vermont agriculture. Oh, yeah, we want to buy local saffron. How much would it cost? Well, it's going to cost you $25 to $30 a gram. Oh, we can get it from Iran for $2 a gram. And I said, yeah, I thought you cared about Vermont agriculture. Oh, well, we do, but can we get it for $5 a gram? And it's just that stuff drives me nuts because talk is cheap.
Well, with that, thank you both very much. I want to respect everybody's afternoons and their schedules, and really, really appreciate the rich conversation and bringing us all up to speed on these two areas. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thank everyone. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Have a
Bye.
great day.
Yep.
Thank you.